How did the world spiral into such unfathomable chaos? What sinister forces could have unleashed the unimaginable, leading to a horrific murder that defies comprehension? Stay tuned, because this is not just another story. It's a chilling revelation of hidden secrets that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. Don't miss a moment of this gripping documentary. Subscribe, like, and comment to join us as we uncover the dark truths the world has tried to bury. The truth awaits. Are you ready to face it? March 12, 2010, Washington, D.C. wakes up to a scene of chaos as federal agents descend upon a high-end apartment complex. A gruesome double murder has shattered the city's diplomatic district. The victims, a promising secretary, Dibe Yazzie, and a man whose true identity is cloaked in secrecy, Agent Shash Begay, a long-serving member of the Secret Service. What led to these tragic deaths? This is the story of betrayal, espionage, and a web of lies that spiraled fatally out of control. Dibe Yazzie had always been a dreamer. Born in 1981 in a small sun-scorched neighborhood of El Paso, Texas, Dibe grew up surrounded by the challenges of poverty. Her father, a construction worker, struggled to keep steady work while her mother cleaned homes to make ends meet. Despite their struggles, Dibe's parents instilled in her a sense of determination and pride. Her father often told her that education was her way out, a way to a life better than they could give her. Dibe listened. By the time she turned 15, she was known at El Paso High School as the overachiever. She was the first to raise her hand in class, and the last to leave after asking the teacher a barrage of questions. She spent her weekends volunteering at local shelters, reading to children, and helping her mother clean houses. Dibe's teachers believed she was destined for great things, yet beneath her bright smile was a girl who carried the weight of her family's future on her shoulders. After graduating, valedictorian of her class in 1999, Dibe worked 2 jobs to put herself through community college before transferring to a university in Austin, Texas. There she majored in public administration, often dreaming of one day shaping policies that could help struggling families like her own. When Dibe walked across the stage at her graduation in 2004, her parents beamed with pride. She was the first in her family to earn a degree. That summer, Dibe packed her modest belongings into a second-hand car and drove to Washington, D.C., determined to make a difference. Dibe's move to Washington, D.C. was both exhilarating and overwhelming. The city buzzed with the promise of power and progress, but Dibe felt like an outsider among the polished professionals. She started small, taking an entry-level administrative role at a non-profit organization. Over the next few years, Dibe's work ethic and charm earned her a reputation as someone who could get things done. Her talent didn't go unnoticed. By 2008, she secured a prestigious job as a secretary at the U.S. Department of State at the State Department. Dibe managed schedules for senior diplomats, organized international summits, and ensured the smooth flow of operations. Behind the scenes, it was a demanding work, but she loved it. Each day brought her closer to her dream of one day climbing the political ladder. Yet, despite her success, Dibe's personal life was lonely. Her demanding job left little room for relationships, and her closest companions were the plants in her apartment. She often wondered if she'd sacrificed too much for her career. Shash Begay was everything Dibe was not. Born in 1968 in Alexandria, Virginia, Shash grew up in a world of structure and privilege. His father, a retired Navy officer, and his mother, a meticulous homemaker, instilled in him a rigid sense of duty. Shash thrived in this environment, excelling in academics and sports. By the time he graduated from the University of Virginia in the 1990s, Shash was already being scouted for government work. He joined the Secret Service in 1994, quickly proving himself a valuable asset. Shash was disciplined, analytical, and fiercely loyal to his country. Over the years, he rose through the ranks, earning respect for his ability to handle high-press situations. By 2010, Shash was embedded as a logistics manager at the State Department, as part of a covert operation to track a growing foreign intelligence network. The mission was critical. Shash's target was Taji Bitsili, a Russian diplomat suspected of coordinating covert operations in the US. For nearly a year, Shash meticulously pieced together Taji's network, often spending late nights reviewing intelligence reports and running surveillance. Every move was calculated, every detail scrutinized. His life had become a balancing act. one half spent protecting his cover at the State Department, the other dedicated to his family in suburban Virginia. Dibé first noticed Shash during a departmental briefing in the April 2009 conference. His confidence and quiet authority set him apart. To her, he was intriguing but distant. For Shash, Dibé was a bright spot in an otherwise calculated existence. Her laughter was warm, her smile disarming. Over the months, their interactions grew from polite exchanges to lingering conversations in the office. Dibé found herself drawn to his mysterious aura, while Shash was captivated by her intelligence and determination. By October 2009, their connection had deepened. Shash often stopped by her desk with questions that had nothing to do with work, and Dibé found herself sharing more about her life than she had with anyone in years. And their ability to coincide in earnings had become more and more difficult, as she told him about El Paso, her parents, and her dreams of making a difference. Shash shared just enough about his own life to keep her interested, but always avoided the truth about his marriage and his role as an undercover agent. Their affair began in secret. It started with stolen moments in quiet corners of the office, evolving into late-night rendezvous at Shash's rented apartment near Capitol Hill. For Dibé, Shash was a glimpse of something extraordinary, a man who made her feel seen in a way no one else ever had. For Shash, Dibé was an escape from the suffocating pressures of his double life, but the affair was not without its cost. Shash's obsession with Dibé began to cloud his judgment. His once meticulous focus on the mission wavered. He started taking unnecessary risks like leaving behind classified documents in his car during their nights together, or ignoring protocol to meet her. Meanwhile, Dibé noticed small inconsistencies in Shash's stories. He often dodged questions about his personal life, and she sometimes caught him glancing over his shoulder as if expecting someone to be watching. By January 2010, Dibé's doubts began to fester. She found a locked briefcase in Shash's apartment one night while he was in the shower. Though she didn't open it, the sight of it unnerved her. It was the kind of item she associated with diplomats or intelligence operatives. A seed of suspicion was planted, and Dibé's instincts told her Shash was hiding something far bigger than she could have imagined. The emotional stakes of their relationship intensified as Shash's mission drew closer to its climax. Taji was scheduled to attend a diplomatic gala in March 2010, an event where Shash planned to gather critical evidence to dismantle the network, but Shash's growing attachment to Dibé threatened the mission's success. His superiors began noticing discrepancies in his reports and warned him to focus. Dibé, meanwhile, grew increasingly uneasy. She didn't fully trust Shash, but she couldn't bring herself to let him go. Her heart told her one thing, but her gut told her another. She began quietly digging into Shash's life, determined to uncover the truth. What she found would shatter both their worlds. The stage was set for a confrontation that neither could escape. The clock was ticking, and both Dibé and Shash were caught in a web of deception, betrayal, and danger that would soon spiral out of control. As winter deepened in January 2010, Dibé Shazi's world began to take on an unfamiliar, ominous tone. Shash Begay, once her escape from the loneliness of DC, had started acting strangely. He became distant, at times distracted, as though his mind was elsewhere. When they met at his apartment, he would often excuse himself to take phone calls in another room, his voice low and urgent. It was during one of these moments that Dibé first noticed the second phone. It was sleek, unmarked, and bore no resemblance to the personal phone Shash always carried with him. Dibé's curiosity grew, but her love for Shash made her hesitant to pry too deep. She reasoned that, perhaps, his job required certain precautions. After all, he had always been vague about his work. Shash described himself as a logistics manager, but his explanations often lacked depth, and when Dibé asked too many questions, he deflected with compliments or a change of subject. Still, Dibé couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something significant. On the evening of February 2, 2010, Dibé stumbled upon a locked briefcase in Shash's apartment. It was tucked away in his closet, partially hidden beneath a pile of neatly folded shirts. She paused, staring at it, her heart pounding. Why would Shash, a logistics manager, need something so officially looking? She reached for it, but it was heavy and the lock was secure. That night, while Shash was out on what he claimed was a work meeting, Dibé sat alone in his apartment, staring at the briefcase, the questions swirling in her mind like a storm. By February 4, 2010, her suspicions grew too large to ignore. Dibé's determination, a quality that had always driven her to excel, now turned toward uncovering the truth. She began observing Shash more closely, paying attention to his routines and the items he carried. One evening she noticed him slip a thin, sealed envelope into the pocket of his coat before leaving. When she later found the coat empty, her unease deepened. Dibé decided to investigate Shash's belongings while he was at work. She found nothing incriminating at first, until she came across a drawer filled with personal items. Among them was a collection of photos, one of which caused her breath to hitch. It was a family portrait. Shash stood beside a beautiful woman and 2 young children, smiling in front of a white picket fence. The picture was tucked away as though Shash didn't want it seen. Dibé stared at it, her hands trembling. The realization was like a punch to her chest. Shash was married. The discovery left Dibé feeling betrayed and humiliated. The man she had fallen for, the man she thought she knew, was not only secretive but also living a double life. Her love for him battled with her anger, creating a storm of emotions she couldn't escape. That night, Dibé confronted Shash. She waited until he came home and placed a photograph on the coffee table, letting it speak for itself. Shash had no choice but to confess. He admitted to being a Secret Service agent, revealing that his work involved sensitive operations and high-stakes missions. He claimed his secrecy was for her safety, citing national security as the reason he had withheld the truth. Shash begged her to keep his identity and the nature of his work a secret, emphasizing the risks to both their lives if the information were exposed. Dibé listened, but her trust in him was irreparably shattered. By February 10, 2010, Dibé's feelings of betrayal festered into anger. The more she thought about Shash's lies, the more she felt used and discarded. She couldn't shake the image of his smiling family off her mind. She felt like a pawn in his game, a mere distraction, while he lived a life that she was never meant to know about. Her love turned to resentment, and resentment soon turned into a need for revenge. Dibé began to meticulously plan her next steps. She wasn't impulsive by nature. Every decision was calculated. On February 12, 2010, she purchased a digital recorder from an electronics store. Her plan was simple: gather evidence. Over the following days, Dibé recorded conversations with Shash, steering him into revealing details about his work and personal life. She didn't fully understand the depth of his operations, but fragments of his words, mentions of surveillance, names of foreign diplomats and references to a target painted a picture of a man deeply embedded in dangerous work. By February 15, 2010, Dibé had compiled enough material to feel confident in her next move. That evening, she sat in her small apartment, drafting an anonymous letter to a major media outlet. In the letter, she outlined Shash's double life, his work as a Secret Service agent, and his betrayal. She attached snippets of the recordings as proof, encrypting the files before preparing to send them. But Dibé's determination came at a cost. She underestimated the reach of the agency Shash worked for. Unbeknownst to her, Shash's superiors had already flagged his behavior as suspicious. His frequent absences, inconsistent reports, and increasing distraction had drawn attention. What do you think will be the next action of Shash if he hears this? Subscribe and share your thoughts on this YouTube channel now. When Shash received an alert from his intelligence sources that someone had made inquiries about him, his heart sank. He knew Dibé was behind it. The Secret Service, now aware of Dibé's activities, viewed her as a threat to national security. Her actions jeopardized not only Shash's career, but an ongoing operation critical to U.S. interests. The agency began monitoring her movements, determined to neutralize the risk she posed. Dibé, meanwhile, remained unaware of the danger closing in around her. She was consumed by her need to expose Shash, believing it was the only way to reclaim her dignity. The days leading up to her final decision were filled with attention, the weight of her choices pressing heavily on her shoulders. She had no idea that every step she took brought her closer to a fatal confrontation, one that would change the course of both their lives forever. March 5, 2010, 11:45 p.m. The quiet of the night in Dibé's upscale DC apartment building was shattered by the sudden piercing sound of a gunshot just moments before. Neighbors recalled hearing raised voices coming from her unit. They recognized Dibby's voice, usually calm and composed, but now it was frantic, almost desperate. The other voice, male, was colder, steadier, and laced with anger. The argument had gone on for several minutes before the sudden silence was broken by a single gunshot. The building's hallways quickly filled with worried tenants whispering in hushed tones. Several of them called 90111 reporting the sounds of a disturbance. When authorities arrived at 11:55 p.m., they found the door to Dibé's apartment slightly ajar. The scene inside was chilling. Dibé lay sprawled on her living room carpet, a single bullet wound in her chest. Her eyes were open but lifeless, and her hand stretched toward her shattered phone, as though she had been trying to reach it in her final moments. Blood pooled beneath her, staining the plush beige carpet in a dark crimson circle. The apartment itself was eerily tidy, aside from the signs of struggle. A coffee table was overturned, and papers from Dibé's desk were scattered across the floor. The room felt frozen in time, a stark contrast to the violence that had just taken place. The initial assumption was clear. Dibé Yazi had been killed in a fit of rage by Shashbegai, but the horror of the night wasn't confined to her apartment. Just 2 blocks away, another grim discovery was made. At 12:15 a.m., a patrol officer spotted a car parked awkwardly by the curb on a dimly lit street. The engine was still running, its headlights casting a ghostly glow. Inside sat Shashbegai, slumped in the driver's seat. His service weapon rested loosely in his hand, and blood trickled from a wound to his temple. To the officer, it appeared to be a textbook case of suicide, an act of guilt following a crime of passion, but as investigators would soon learn, the truth was far more complicated. By dawn on March 6, 2010, the DC Metro Police had taken over both crime scenes, and detectives were initially certain of their narrative. Shashbegai, a spurned lover, had killed Dibé in a jealous rage before taking his own life. It was a story they had seen before, but as they delved deeper, the cracks began to show. Dibé's apartment was combed for evidence. Detectives found a set of encrypted emails on her laptop, drafts that hinted at her plan to expose Shashu's identity and his secret life. Her words were bold and accusatory, pointing to a woman determined to seek justice. The emails mentioned recordings, though the detectives initially found no sign of them until they noticed her phone. It lay shattered on the floor near her body, its screen completely destroyed. Despite its condition, forensic specialists managed to recover fragments of audio. As they pieced the recordings together, a chilling narrative began to emerge. Dibé had been in possession of damning evidence about Shash's work and was determined to go public. The recording captured Shash pleading with her, his tone desperate and warning her of the dangers she was courting. But there was something else. Another voice, faint and distorted, suggesting the presence of a third party. As the investigation progressed, the case took an unexpected turn. At 3 p.m. on March 10, 2010, a high-ranking agent from the Secret Service arrived at the precinct, effectively shutting down the local investigation. The agent cited national security and demanded all evidence, including Dibé's emails and recordings, overnight. The case was classified, leaving the detectives frustrated and sidelined. Rumors of a cover-up began circulating almost immediately. The press caught wind of the abrupt shift in jurisdiction, and questions started to surface. Who was Shashbegai, and why would the Secret Service intervene in what appeared to be a domestic dispute? On March 15, 2010, the narrative unraveled further ballistics. Reports revealed that the bullet casing recovered from Dibé's apartment didn't match Shash's service weapon. The revelation stunned detectives. If Shash hadn't fired the shot that killed Dibé, then who had? Surveillance footage from the area provided the first clue. It showed an unmarked black SUV parked near Dibé's building just minutes before the gunshot was heard. Dozens of rockworks were visible, presumably shooting at the SUV after they found out that it had been battery carbonized. The SUV was traced back to the Secret Service's Covert Operations Division. This discovery cast Shash's death in a new light. Forensic analysis of his car revealed inconsistencies in the suicide. Though the angle of the gunshot wound suggested it was fired by someone else, Shashbegai had been executed. The evidence painted a grim picture. Dibé's and Shashbegai's death were both silenced to protect a larger secret. In the days following the discovery, whistleblowers within the agency began leaking information to an investigative journalist. On March 20, 2010, a bombshell article exposed the truth. The Secret Service had deemed DiBiase a threat to national security after learning of her plan to expose Shash. Her knowledge of an ongoing mission to dismantle a foreign intelligence network had made her a liability. Shash, who had pleaded for her safety, was seen as compromised and no longer trustworthy. Both were targeted. Dibe's murder was sanctioned as an authorized hit, and Shash's death was staged to look like a suicide. The revelation sent shockwaves through Washington, sparking public outrage and calls for accountability. By April 1, 2010, the Secret Service defended its actions, claiming Dibe's actions jeopardized national security. They painted Shash as a rogue agent, blaming his emotional entanglements for the chaos that ensued. But the damage was done. The murders of DiBiase and Shash Begai exposed a chilling reality. In the shadowy world of espionage, no one was safe, not even those who served the system. The nation was left grappling with the dark truth, and the echoes of that night would haunt everyone who touched the case. The deaths of DiBiase and Shash Begai remain a haunting chapter in the annals of espionage. Their story underscores the human cost of secrecy and betrayal, leaving audiences with a chilling reminder: in the shadows of power, no one is safe. Only those who seek the truth will subscribe, like, share, and comment on this channel. The question is, are you ready to stand with the truth, or will you turn away? This is your moment to prove where you stand. Let's go. Join the movement and uncover what others fear to face.